Good morning, Dr. Cake here, talking about consumer behavior, consumer decision making. Actually, I should call it customer behavior and customer decision making because it's different for us consumers, maybe buying at a store online, versus buyers at a business who are buying most likely from some other business. Hope you guys are doing well. Had a long day yesterday, taught till about 10 o'clock, so getting up here early to try to talk about consumer behavior. But it's been studied for a long time. It came from psychology back in late 50s and early 60s. And I've been interested in this subject as long as I can remember when I went to school, just trying to understand why people buy what they do and why they're motivated. So that being said, those things differ depending on the type of product that people are buying, what type of shopping event it is. So some products we're more involved with. We take more time to shop with them. The more we spend sometimes, certainly the more time we take to analyze and evaluate and consider what brand or brands we may buy. I often say we look at things analytically, a lot of us, but when it comes down to decision making, we sometimes decide based on emotions. Like I know when I go to buy a new car or a new used car, I get pretty analytical, look at all the features that are important to me, look at how each car is performing on those particular features. But then when I make a decision, it's like, oh, I like that blue Volvo because of it's Volvo and has this brand aura, and I like the color, which is more of an emotional thing. Or I know Volvo is safe, which is important, but what does that really mean to me? If you dig down real deep, or if you unpeel the onion, as we say, what does that really mean? It means everybody that rides in my Volvo is going to be very safe, and if a crash happens, no one will die. So that's the emotional thing, beyond just the basic attributes, as we call them. Now, attributes are very important. You can form attitudes towards those particular attributes or benefits of a product. And certain attributes are more important than others, depending on the product and actually the person too. Type of person or background or what they're using the product for. So it's our job as marketers to figure out what those important attributes are, figure out if there are other attributes that aren't being spoken about or aren't being served by the particular product or service that we have. And if there are other attributes, that might be a way for us to gain an advantage versus other products. So we come out with something new that meets a certain need or benefit, that's an attribute, and we take customers away from another brand because of that. We call it gap analysis, finding a gap in the attribute or the benefits. So understanding attitudes are very important as far as, well, consumers as well as B2B marketing, business to business marketing. A little different versus consumer. With B2B, a lot of it's about personal relationships. It may come down to just a personal relationship and how well you can adapt your product or service to that particular company. I've been in it a little bit, but I know a lot of people who are in it. And many times it's a matter of getting on a supplier list, a list of suppliers that are accepted by the company, so that once you get on that list, like in grocery, once you get on that list, if the store manager isn't told to carry your product, if he wants to, then he can because you're on the accepted supplier list. But many times with people that supply raw materials or other things to manufacturers, it takes a long time to get, even to get the supplier's attention, let alone get on the list in terms of a customer that you can get. There are many different qualifications and tests that you may go through in order to get on that list. Let's say you're Hershey and you supply equipment or you supply cocoa or whatever it might be. You as a supplier have to have the right costs, have the right relationship built into what you do, be reliable, having a product to meet the needs of somebody as huge as Hershey who makes 50 million kisses a day. Imagine that, 50 million kisses a day is what I'm told. A friend of mine's controller there at the plant. So you have to get on that list. And then it's a matter of, if you are a salesperson, understanding who makes up the buying committee, who's on that committee, the decision maker, the person who handles all the meetings and helps you get in or not to see the most relevant people. And it's very important to understand who makes up that committee and how the company operates and certainly something about them. That's a whole other subject, but it's part of the buying process. So back to customers. So we're, say we're very set on the brands that we use, and a lot of us are. What does it take for us to change? What does it take? Well, we have 5 senses, right? Visual, you look at things, we smell things, we touch things, we hear things, and we taste things. So the appeals could be to one or more of those senses. What attracts you most is visually, I would say, at least when you think about broadcast media or you think about things online. Visually and hearing, visual and hearing. So those things can bring attention to your brand. That's the first thing you have to do. Bring attention to your brand. Shake up the thing, shake up the market, shake up people's lives somewhat. And then you have to pay it off quickly with a benefit communication, something that somebody may need, or who knows, they may be looking for a brand at that particular time or not. Those who are very loyal and have used certain brands for a long time, those are the harder ones to get to, the harder ones to bring attention, because you'll really need to get their attention, not only with some visual or sound. You'll have to communicate a strong benefit quickly, whether it be some image or whether it's an actual product specific benefit. But when you think about psychology and you think about consumers, and surveys have tested this out, and you can do it yourself. Perception is reality. Part of our job as marketers is to change perception, particularly if it's not good, or particularly if consumers think a certain way about us and it's not necessarily true, and we want them to think a certain way. So how do you do that? Well, it's, again, getting their attention and constant repetition of the message that you're trying to get to them. And you have to make sure you're getting to the right target audience, getting to enough of the target audience at the same time. Because through a lot of study, through a lot of research, you may find out that the attitudes are not what they should be. I've had this experience. And the perception may be wrong or may be true. And if it's true, then you got to do something about it. Then you're in, as I say, deeper doo-doo than if the perception is wrong. But I worked with one brand where the perception, as it was when I was working on the brand, had been festering, so to speak, for almost 15, maybe even 20 years, until the company, I wouldn't say I did it, but until I was brought in and a few other people were brought in to change that perception. But first we had to figure out where the perception was, and we did that through research. And then once we did that, we had to figure out where it was, the bad perception was festering, and then ways to reach that particular target audience. And those were opinion leaders, people who had an opinion leader about our brand, retailers and distributors. So we had to go to them first and change their opinion, because they were telling consumers about our brand. And then secondly, once we did that, for about 6 months to a year, we went on and spent money more on the consumer perception. So we're working at it from 2 angles, from distributor, retailer, as well as directly to consumer. So where once our brand was perceived on a scale of 1 to 10 as a 4, 4.5, pretty bad, right? Others were perceived on that scale, their major brands, as a 7 or 8. After about 2 years, we finally got up to about a 6, but because it was festering for so long, we knew it was going to take a long time to change. It was like, dropping water on a rock. It'd take forever to change. Not sure where it's at now. That was about 15 years ago. But the perception is definitely better. So you have to manage the perception, manage the relationship. And in today's world, you can do that one-on-one with the consumer or with any customer, particularly B2B. You have to do it one-on-one. So we got to get people motivated to buy our product. Maslow, some of you may be familiar with Maslow, the 5 levels of motivation, basics, physiological needs, safety needs, need for love and friendship, the need for, I always forget the 4th one, the need for self-esteem, and the 5th one, the need for self-actualization. Maslow theorized you couldn't move up on this pyramid. It's a pyramid. Maslow theorized you couldn't move up on that pyramid to meet those different needs until you satisfy the levels below, which were basic physiological needs and safety. And what we found out later was people are striving for different need satisfactions, sometimes at the same time, depending on what the situation is or what the product is. So, but it was a good place to start in terms of understanding what needs were and how to satisfy those needs. So safety, when 9/11 happened, people were very worried about safety, very worried about safety. I was working on some tourism business at the time, unfortunately, and when that happened, no one traveled anymore. So it definitely affected the business. So we had to adapt to that. When you think about being accepted by friends and all the products we use, or our spouse or our better half, we use particular types of products to maybe try to satisfy that particular need. So very important to understand that. Secondly, it's also important to understand that there's learning going on with consumers, and understanding where consumers are, our customers are, in the learning process is very important. So how do we learn? How does that affect product purchase? Number one, we buy products and we use them. We're satisfied or not satisfied. The thing I hate the most about any product is if it's being advertised or shown on a package to look or feel a certain way, and I get it home and it's not that way, either by taste or by look. Many of the consumer product snacks may have a picture of a product very big, very big. When you get it home, it's about this small. And most of the time, if it's a lot different, you'll see some type on the package that says size, actual size not shown, enlarged for enhancement or whatever it is. So, but it's that type is so small, I miss it. So that's not always good. But you learn from that, and you still may like the product or not. What are the ways do we learn? What are the ways do we learn? Think about it. If we don't already use the product, we learn through different messages from those different senses that we get bombarded with every day. We learn from that. And the theorists, the behavioral theorists, everyone knows Pavlov's dog, right? That's about conditioning. The dog didn't know he was hungry or didn't know the food was there, but once the food was there, Pavlov rang the bell or whatever, had some type of device that told the dog the food was there. Once the dog knew the food was there, he started to salivate, or she, whatever it was, I forget what. So check it out on YouTube. Just do Pavlov's dog. You'll get a representation of what it is. Probably not the real Pavlov dog or Pavlov. But so every time the dog heard the bell, he knew the food was there. Same with us. Every time we may see a logo, every time we may hear something, every time we may smell something related to a brand, we think about that brand before we even see it. So we're conditioned to think about that brand. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Picking the right things to condition us is very important to understand. Secondly, brands use a lot of reinforcement learning, a lot of reinforcement, particularly with loyalty cards or anything related to that or like that. The more we buy, the more we get a bonus. We go to the grocery store, we have a loyalty card. Sooner or later, we might get some free product or free gas or and the retailer follows up with us with messages depending on what we buy, or a coupon spits out depending on what we buy at the register, or is handed to us by the person at the register. That's all based on reinforcement. Buy our brand again. Or in the case of competitive coupons being spit out when we buy their competitor, that's kind of cross reinforcement. Buy a brand in this category, but buy us. Change your loyalty. And those behaviors are being looked at, I would say, every day by retailers and a lot by manufacturers. Because they have your loyalty card, they're looking at your behavior over time, your response to promotion, who you are, what you buy, and what things affect your purchase patterns. So if anybody wants to get into a career, database management like that is a great place to go, particularly for marketing people or anybody that's into IT. It would be a great place. So you can affect learning in a number of different ways. So what affects learning? Well, memory. Memory affects learning, particularly if we have brain experiences. The memory can lack. As we get older, it does lack a little bit more. Gee, where are my keys? I forget. Where's my cell phone? I went crazy a week ago looking for my cell phone at school. I mean, totally crazy, because I couldn't find it. Anyways, I finally found it. Thank goodness. It was trauma. So understanding what drives people, what forms attitudes, what gets them to change brands, how they have learned or not. And you can do research to figure this out. And what their attitudes are definitely affect what people buy. But understanding that through research is very, very, very important. If you do have research money, I recommend you at least talk to consumers once a year to figure these things out. Or if you're trying to get response to certain types of messages or types of packaging, being new or versus old, please go out and do research to try to figure out consumers' attitudes and what motivates them to buy their current product or your product, and what will motivate them to buy your product in the future. We'll talk more about branding and brand positioning research, something I've done a lot of, to understand what will motivate people to buy your brand and not other brands. So that all being said, that's our seminar for today. I will put out some questions hopefully later today on this seminar, and which will be due, what's today? Today is Wednesday. I'm catching up because I just am getting done with a semester at a university. And I got a late start on this class because of some technical issues and some other issues. But come next week, we'll be totally on top of this, and we'll get back to where normal should be, whatever normal is. That being said, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.